Why don't we bring our guest in right now? Ladies and gentlemen, let me introduce you to the human monster truck, Perry Von Vicious. Hello, Perry. How are you doing today?
Good, good. Thanks for having me.
We're very excited to have you. Like I mentioned before, this is our first interview that we've ever done. I'm especially excited, of course, because I work in the monster truck world. So I guess I can start by saying I first discovered you probably 2-ish years ago, maybe. You popped up on Instagram somehow, no idea. I've been kind of seeing what you've been doing ever since, and I've seen a lot of your promos you've done in front of the green screen, with the old school monster truck clips playing ahead of time. And I've seen pictures of your Gravedigger inspired gear and things like that. So as a monster truck nerd, especially, this is very exciting for me, but we've never talked to a wrestler, any of us. So very cool stuff.
Well, thanks. I appreciate it.
So I guess, first things first, got some information from your cage match profile and everything like that. So I guess, I don't know. I guess I don't really know where to start. So I guess I should start by asking, where did your early interest in wrestling come from? And what kind of attached you to that? Was it certain characters, certain storylines, or certain moments you remember? What are your early memories of wrestling?
Yeah, really the thing that like bought me in, like I had seen little bits of it here and there. Like I didn't grow up in a wrestling family at all. But when I was in elementary school, I would have been, I think, first or second grade. My brother would have been a kindergartner. We got a Sega Genesis and had no games for it. We had one game. My dad had managed to pick up Donald Duck's Quack Shot, which was awesome. I played it on stream recently, and it 100% holds up. But my cousin Zach had a Sega, and had played through a lot of his games already. So he kind of secondhand, we got donated a small box of his used games, and one of them was WWF Monday Night Raw. And that was like the first time that I really, I think, understood what wrestling was, even. Seeing like Doink the Clown and Shawn Michaels and Bret Hart and Yokozuna and Undertaker all in that game, like, I started to understand, like, oh, I see. So, like, what I've known about wrestling over just a ring with what I'd ostensibly been told as a little kid are just fake fights or whatever, however it was described when I'm a little kid. I started to understand that there were like these big characters, and they were like, some of them were scary, some of them were weird, and that was really intriguing to me. And my brother and I really enjoyed playing the game, and that kind of stuck with me through elementary school, kind of just a little grain in the back of the head. And then when I hit middle school, I had some, I started to make like new friends that like weren't just in my little neighborhood. You get older, you can like hop on your bike and go a few neighborhoods over. And that was when I got to start like checking out like Nitro or Raw with some friends, because it was, friends that lived just close enough that I could be out that late at their house and see a little of it, because it was never going to be on the TV at my house.
Mm-hmm.
My parents knew they were in over their heads with my brother and I. I'm for those who haven't seen me in the ring, I am 6'3" and I weigh 245 pounds. I'm a big guy, and my brother is just as big, and we've always been big. Like even when we were little, we were big. And my mom is 5 foot nothing. My dad is like 5'5", maybe.
Wow.
Like they were just little bitty people. We got all the genetics from my mom's side. All our uncles over there were like 6'10". Like we're short on that side of the family.
Wow.
So they were in over their heads with us. So anything that had violence, anything that seemed like replicable, they wanted us far away from. They did not want to have to worry about their two kids that could take the house down if they had to, butting heads. And rightly so. I think I understand where their concern came from.
Damn.
But that was sort of like what led me into being really interested in wrestling. And I think there was something about it not being allowed at my house that made it real appealing too. You know, it was sort of it's the same reason my friends and I watched Beavis and Butthead. Like we knew our parents didn't approve.
Right.
And then growing up in the Northeast, me and my friends could kind of try that stuff out because every winter we basically had a safe place to bump all around the yard because snow is a great cushion. So
Absolutely.
yeah, me and my friends, kind of almost building like the snow fort equivalent of wrestling rings, and then playing like King of the Mountain, where we would. It wasn't we didn't plan out who was winning, but like if someone grabbed you and hooked you for a move and you knew what it was, you just went with them because who cared? We were just goofing around.
Absolutely.
And I think that stayed in my head. I get to high school and I'm in punk bands and I'm in theater. When I finished high school, I was in a touring punk band. Like we did 2 summers of Warped Tour. Um, and all the while, I started college and I started theater there. But I'm no longer like the little kid that I was when I was doing theater. I'm now 6'3" and at the time 300 pounds, and not a good 300 pounds to be clear. Uh, I'm gigantic, and I'm being told by college theater professors like, yeah, you're good. You're a very talented actor. You can sing like crazy, but we can't have you starring opposite our female lead because she's 4'10" and practically looks like a child, and you're this giant man child that's going to look really weird and be upsetting to people. So I quickly became disillusioned with theater. And some friends kind of were like, well, you always liked wrestling, and that's basically just theater for gorillas. Like, maybe look into it. And me and some friends started watching from a very critical, like performance minded eye, watching wrestling every week during college. And I went to like one or two little indie shows right at the end of college, right before I graduated. Me and some friends would go out to them, and I asked the ring announcer where I could get trained, and he knew thus the only school at the time in Western Massachusetts. That was Kevin Landry's wrestling school out here. I believe they still exist, but I never hear about them, and I don't ever meet anyone who graduates from there. But I'm told they still exist. So yeah, went there and trained, and that's that's the through line from elementary school Sega Genesis to taking a first bump in the ring.
That's so fascinating too, because I feel like everybody's first or earliest memory of wrestling is always, they saw Andre the Giant or something similar on TV. And for you, it's a video game, and I mean, obviously, like you still play them. I mean, we still play them too. I mean, and like there were so many of those games back in those days when we were kids. Like No Mercy for me. Like if you didn't watch wrestling or really know wrestling, you knew No Mercy and you played the shit out of it still. Like, it's yeah. So it's kind of interesting how yours is different from, I feel like, from how so many people answer that question when you watch other wrestlers being interviewed. So you mentioned that you went to Kevin Landry's training school, got trained there. So according to the Cage Match profile, it lists Kevin Landry, Johnny Idol, and Antonio Thomas as your trainers. Are those all accurate?
Yes, although it's a wildly incomplete list. And also, in 2025, no one would know who Antonio Thomas was anymore, because he's now uses the ring name Thomas Santel, and he is one of the two head trainers for the Beyond Wrestling School.
Oh, okay, cool.
He did everything. If you remember a tag team in WWE called the Heartthrobs,
Sure.
He was one half of the Heartthrobs.
Okay.
It was him. He was at the time Antonio Thomas, and his partner was Romeo Rosselli, and they came out with feather boas, and I think on the Indies they entered to It's Raining Men, and in WWE they got something kind of like similar-ish.
Sure.
So that was he sort of became the head trainer while I was there because he had just come back, like he'd been let go and then did a tour of Japan and then came to our school. Which is where he trained originally, but came back to be a trainer. So he sort of took over the classes. But Johnny Idol was the guy that took me out on the road and got me all my initial bookings when I was new. And he would sub in on training classes if other people didn't make it. Kevin owned the school, but like so many guys who own wrestling schools, I think maybe 3 classes he ever ran while I was there. He was a good trainer, but he just he had other stuff going on. And then he had a local guy named Aaron Morrison who was essentially running the school for him, that did most of the classes. That was my sort of East Coast trainers. But about a year and a half in, I moved to California. And when you're that new, you're not established, and some people, you don't move out there and people are going, oh, we can't wait to book this guy, he's a big star. That wasn't the case. The way you get in is you find a school that also runs a show and you start training there. So I went to the there's one on the East Coast and one on the West Coast. I went to the West Coast Big Time Wrestling, that at the time was owned and run by Kirk White. And that's where I trained out there. I trained under Jason Stiles, who was a great hand and a great guy. But that's also where I trained alongside a brand new to the business Erin Solo, and also still in her first year at the time, a very young Bailey.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
Oh,
Yeah, one of my oldest friends in wrestling is also one of the wealthiest individuals in wrestling.
Is that somebody you keep in touch with ever still?
Like once, twice a year,
Sure.
we text. Like if she does something really cool, or like when she has her match at Mania, I'll usually text her. But otherwise, it's been a really long time. I mean, that was, I think, 2012 was the last time we were ever on a show together.
Wow.
And so it's been a long time. Like, we've seen each other since then. If she like comes through like somewhere where I'm also like wrestling that weekend, we'll try to meet up for food or something. But
Sure.
She's got her own life now.
Yeah, I'd say she's a little busy, huh?
A little bit.
Yeah, I mean, in a lot of ways, we all are.
Of course.
Like how many friends from 12 years ago that you don't live in proximity to do you see, right?
This is like the only one.
I'm one of those people that like stays in touch with everybody, but the older I grow, the more I realize most people aren't that way. So I'm just weird, I guess.
Yeah.
So yeah, you had a lot of different trainers, and you kind of came up in a couple different spots. If you were to forget everything wrestling right now, and you had to relearn and retrain, what would you change about your training as compared to when you got trained originally?
I would pay a lot more attention. I paid attention to everything. I absorbed everything like a sponge and took all my trainers just like their words as gospel. If I could go back and tell me right before I started anything, it would be, listen to them about what you're doing physically and like how to stay safe. But when it comes to things like psychology, where to get booked, how to work, how to present a character, how to market yourself, how to sell merch, maybe take a closer look at your trainers and see how much money they've made and think it over.
Sure.
Because they all had a very old school mentality where they said, oh, you're going to be a heel because you're good. You can command the ring really well. You're going to be a heel. That means no merch. That means don't even come out of the curtain. Don't say hi to the audience. Don't see anybody. Just hide out. You're a heel. And then they would say, oh, like one of the things that really drove me nuts early on, they said, the less you do in a match, the better. Don't go out there and do everything under the sun. Don't do a bunch of big, cool stuff. The best matches in the world are the ones where the least happens. And their shining example of that always was Andre and Hogan. They did nothing, but they made the most money. And like, I don't know, that might have been true 10 years before they were training me even, which, puts you close to 30 years ago. That might have been true then, but even by the time I was training, that wasn't true. And I was a 22-year-old kid fresh out of college. I didn't know any better than to pay attention to them. Otherwise, like now, I'd objectively look at it and go, well, these guys have never wrestled outside of the state that they were born in. Apart from Thomas Santel, apart from him, none of them have ever been signed. None of them have ever left the country to wrestle. None of them are recognizable outside of the 2 promotions they work for. I'm not going to listen to them.
Sure.
And I wish I'd known that sooner.
Sure. I guess, yeah. When you're young, you don't know any better. I mean, what else are you going to do other than just listen to the people that tell you, oh, listen to me, you know? And I think that's just something that comes with age is the more perspectives, the better. And you can kind of pick apart what makes sense to you and what doesn't. And I guess everybody's probably a little different that way.
Yeah, and it's a tough thing in wrestling, too, because by the time you start to hit the age where you can wisen up and go, I don't know if I'm going to listen to these guys, you're kind of past what's considered like the prime age in wrestling.
Sure.
So kind of a bummer to not have like your brain just right and a nice young healthy body that you're working inside of.
Sure. And real quick, I got to touch on this because I saw this in your cage match profile. Who is Andy Licious?
Yeah, so early on, Perry Von Vicious is the name that I used since my first match. And it was because I was initially like a rich snob heel with an ascot and a monocle and everything. And that was the character. I went to a show and the promoter said, hey, we need you to go out and be a babyface tonight. And he told me like, while I'm behind the curtain, like my opponent's already gone through the curtain. So I have like no time. And I was like, okay. And he goes, yeah, great, but your name doesn't work. And I said, well, I don't know what to tell you. I'm already in gear and it says vicious in giant letters across the butt. So what are we doing? And he goes, well, your opponent likes to milk his entrance. So you got a few minutes to figure it out. And I said, all right, I'll be vicious. And then I thought my brother's name is Andy. So it's like, I'll be vicious, Andy, Licious. It just kind of the English major in me that loves puns and dumb word play, it just clicked instantly. And so I was vicious Andy Licious, and I wrestled under that name, I think, twice. I want to say it was like 2 matches or 2 or 3. And it was for some little company that didn't film their shows. And, it was like all charity events. One of those things where I'm in my first year in the business. I'm just lucky to have any booking. Vicious Andy Licious is a character who is more or less lost to time. I think somewhere deep on my YouTube, I have a couple matches where I use that name, but again, they're from 16 years ago.
No, we got to try to find those. We should have played them during this.
If you find early Perry stuff, I am unrecognizable in every way. Again, I when I started training, I was 300 pounds. 300 pounds, fully clean shaven. My hair dyed a lot brighter than it is now. And again, rich snob character that came out in a suit with an ascot and a monocle.
That's awesome. Absolutely awesome. So kind of shifting from the beginning of wrestling to your early memories of monster trucks, because obviously you've been using the human monster truck gimmick sort of for a while. What was your earliest memory instead of wrestling now? Monster trucks. How did you discover monster trucks? What kind of stuck with you when you first discovered it? Talk to us a little bit about the beginning interest of monster trucks.
So this one goes back way further than the wrestling did. The wrestling, I would have been 7 or 8 at the time. I was 2 years old, and at my babysitter's there was another kid my age. And one day he brought in a VHS tape that his parents had recorded off television. And it was the entirety of the event, Return of the Monster Trucks.
Oh my God, yes.
Yes. The first ever televised side-by-side monster truck racing.
What a classic
VHS. Yeah, the classic Frankenstein, Blue Thunder, or it was Rolling Thunder, Blue Thunder, Frankenstein, Monster Vet, Bigfoot, Awesome Kong 2, Michigan Ice Monster, USA 1. The classic, like
the other two have
really
no
laid
idea what's happening, right? They have no clue. I'm loving it.
This laid such a foundation for like everything I understood about like being in front of an audience, seeing like a packed Superdome, for this whole event, and then they would flash like quick little glimpses at other events around the country that were also packed. It was such a formative moment in my childhood. We borrowed a neighbor's VCR to stack on top of our VCR, and borrowed the tape from the kid at my babysitter so my parents could make a copy. And then I watched that tape so many times that it stopped playing right, and they had to do it again. I watched that thing so much as a little kid that I didn't see it again. I was probably, I don't know, maybe 5 or 6 the last time I had watched it. By then it'd been 4 years of watching it over and over. 5 or 6 was the last time I'd watched it. While the world was shut down in 2020, so that would make me 36 at the time. I discovered that it was on Amazon Prime and was like, oh, cool. I hit play. And my wife had to point out to me that I was doing it. I was saying lines along with it while it was playing. So like 30 years later, having not seen any of it in that time, I'm sitting in front of my computer just out loud, just saying stuff along with the announcer. And like they'd cut away to like little music video segments, and I'd be humming along with the song because I knew it. And it'd be like some random song that was never used for anything else in the history of media. So yeah, that was the first time for me. And then obviously, again, my parents being like not wrestling people, they were definitely not monster truck people either. Like I always joke with my dad that they've got to be so confused about how I grew up with a love of the redneck arts. Like being into wrestling and monster trucks just doesn't track with my family at all. So I watched that like crazy, came home, and it was all I would talk about, just monster trucks, monster truck, monster truck. My parents didn't even know what it meant. And, they finally took me out to a toy store in our town, and my mom had to ask the person behind the counter, my kid's talking about monster trucks. Do you even know what this means? I said, oh yeah. And they walked us over, and on the pegs was the Matchbox Superchargers, which had Bigfoot and USA 1 and Rollin' Thunder and a bunch of the trucks from the tape I'd watched. So yeah, that also led to my love of toy making and toys, which has informed a great deal of my adult life.
Incredible. And we got Phil Vicinanza here in the YouTube comments as well. Phil runs the Monster Truck Collecting Facebook group. I hear he also runs the internet, but yeah, hi Phil. I hope you're still here. Please feel free to ask any questions to Perry if you would like. But man, that's funny that it's so funny that back then like people didn't know what monster trucks were. And that's not to say you're old or anything, but I mean, it's so crazy because like everybody, growing up, everybody knows of Gravedigger and Bigfoot and all that stuff, even if they don't follow it, just household names in pop culture, I guess you could say.
Absolutely.
So along with that, I see, you frequent shows every now and then. I know you've gotten the chance to see some pretty cool names from your childhood recently, like Monster X shows and whatnot. Recently discovered your vlog from, I believe, when you went to an All-Star show. I believe it was last year. You hung out with Brian Wagner, probably like a Chuck Plumley, whoever else he probably had there. I don't know if Stacy would have been there. And I've done quite a few shows for Wagner back when he did a lot of shows up in Wisconsin still. And it's such a laid back environment, such a great group of people. It really doesn't get any better, but you got to drive a monster truck for the first time in that video. Coincidentally, I have driven that same truck. The second time I had ever driven a truck. I believe the week before that, I drove the Warrior Ride truck, which was Pablo's first Gravedigger. So like that was super cool, nice. Obviously. And then the second week, Ryan's like, "Oh, hey, do you want to take identity theft for a spin?" I'm like, "Yeah, of course." And it's super cool truck. It's a little different than a lot of trucks are because your rear steer is on the left instead of the right, and it's one of those preference things. But the rear steer switch flips opposite way of what a lot of people might expect. So how was it driving a monster truck for the first time?
So I'll address the rear steer first. That's actually the same direction that I set mine up in beam, so that was real easy for me.
That's like the old school
Like that
way I
felt
think a
really
lot
natural.
of people used to do it. Because it makes sense if you think about it. That's actually the direction you're turning the tires.
Yeah, that's exactly my logic. As I'm kicking the switch the direction I want the back of the truck to go.
Mm-hmm.
So that part was easy. It's technically not the first time I've driven a monster truck. It's just the first time I've driven one as an adult.
Okay.
Growing up in Greenfield, Massachusetts, the original owners of the American Guardian truck were in that town, and they were family friends. This was, I found out years later, didn't realize it at the time. That truck had previously been Wildfire 1. And then right before that, it was Buffalo Tremor 3, the one with the coilovers.
Oh, okay, sure.
So it's a truck that had a great history and was even the same body. They had just repainted the body every time.
Wow.
So I actually learned to drive because it's weird. That was one of the last stick shift monster trucks ever made. And so it was like full on like clutch and shifting in that truck.
I can't.
That
imagine.
is the truck that I learned. I learned to drive stick shift on that monster truck.
That's insane.
Out behind the garage that the family friends owned.
Wow.
They taught me with the little travel tires on it, and I got to drive it with the big tires one time just for like a quick lap around their backfield. But every time it was, you have to do this real slow because the owner, Dan, would come and be with me while I drove it. But it was a center seat, set up for one person to be in it. So he would stand with his feet on the roll cage, holding inside the body, showing me what to do as I inched along. And if I got going too fast and it shook me, to go, whoa, 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 and I'd have to like stop. And which makes sense. I was 13 at the time.
Sure.
So yeah, I'd have been a little iffy too if I was him.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, so yeah, many years later, getting to drive one actually on a track and, one that was a more modern version. And it was awesome. And my whole crew that was with me, I was actually up for 2 wrestling bookings up in Maine when that happened. I had one Friday night and one Saturday night. So we went to the Saturday afternoon. We didn't even know there was a show going on. Me and a carload of wrestlers are headed up to Maine. And right before our exit, I kind of just glanced up from my phone. I'm in the back seat on my phone. I look up and I go, did anyone just see a monster truck? And they were all like, yeah, you see monster trucks everywhere. Whatever, man. I was like, I don't know. And so I pull up Apple Maps and I see there's a speedway right there. And I was like, well, it says there's a speedway. And the first Google pictures that come up are from other monster truck events that have been there. And I was like, oh, there's got to be something going on. So I quickly look them up and go, hey, there's a show tomorrow afternoon, guys. Let's go. And I told everyone, like, oh, it'll be my treat. Like, figuring I would just, it's cheap. It's a speedway show. It's not going to be a big deal. Mm-hmm. And they all kind of said, like, yeah, sure. We'll see if Randy, who owns Limitless Wrestling up in Maine, which is one of the biggest indie companies in the country. We were staying at his house. He helps run a bunch of other companies up there. So he was on production for the shows we were on. And we said, yeah, we'll see if Randy wants to go. This will be great. And we asked him, and he, of course, was like, oh, yeah, we're doing that. So we go and we do our show that night. I get blasted in the face. We all thought my nose was broken. Terrible night at the office. Go back to their place. Everyone stays up till 3 or 4 in the morning watching wrestling and shouting at the TV. Caught like 4 hours of sleep before we had to get up and get breakfast if we were going to make it over in time for the pit party. And as we're in line for me to buy tickets for everybody, a voice that I'd never heard before says, hey, are you Perry Von Vicious? And this has happened to me at a lot of monster truck shows now. But this was the first time I had other wrestlers with me to actually see it. So like they've heard me say this happens. They've never seen it.
Now they believe you.
And yeah. And so I go, yeah. And I turn and it's Chuck Plumley and he's wearing his whole attire for like the show. He's all done up in all-star monster truck. He's got the lanyard and everything.
God, I love Chuck.
And he kind of looks, he's the best. He looks the crew of us up and down and he goes, you guys didn't buy tickets already or anything, right? And I said, no. And he goes, all right, cool. Come with me. He just walks us past the front gate and walks us right to a table and goes, "Yeah, we need VIP passes for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of these 5." And just walked us in, marched us past the line of people waiting to go on the ride truck, and goes, "Yeah, you guys should go for a ride. Go on." Just waved us up, and we went for a ride. Then he had me do the "Gentlemen, Start Your Engines" to kick the show off, which was pretty cool.
Fantastic.
And in the middle of the show, he came to us and said, "Hey, do you want to drive the ride truck like after the crowd clears out?" And I kind of told him, like, "Well, I don't actually know if we're staying till the end of the show. Like, I got my pictures already. I got a bunch of clips for the vlog already, and we have a show we have to get to that we're kind of helping to run." And as I'm starting to say that, Randy from Limitless, who is the kingpin of Maine wrestling, no wrestling show happens in Maine without him kind of telling them to do it, just looked at me and he goes, "Oh, if you're driving that thing, we're not going anywhere. The show will wait for us."
That's incredible.
And so I was like, "Yeah, that's true. It doesn't matter if I'm late to the show. I'm in the main event. Like, I'm not on till the end." Cool. And so when we went down, the whole crew got to come on. Randy, my buddy Johnny Torres, who he graduated wrestling school with me. Now he's a commentator all these years later. So he's been with me since the beginning. My buddy ZPB, who started wrestling a year or two ahead of me and was actually my first ever singles match back in 2008. And he was there and got to ride along with some of the like IWTV production guys. So it's just like a very cool experience to have like a load of your wrestling friends in the truck while you got to drive it around the track. It's very cool.
It's very special that they got to experience the gimmick, which probably wasn't much of a gimmick. That was real life. That's real life for Perry. Hey, Schwartz, I got a question for you, if I could. What's it like to be the only one on the show currently that hasn't driven a monster truck? Just wondering, because George got to do it at my wedding.
It's pretty fun.
Anyway.
Well, I mean, it just shows that you're a bad friend. So,
well, anyway,
but you'll have to come up in the future.
Absolutely.
I would love to.
Listen. We can make it happen. I know of a truck that has a bunch of tacos all over it. And
what time is it?
I believe it's crunch time.
Hell yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Hell yeah.
Yeah. So we gotta get Perry Von Vicious at Throwdown, Monster Truck Throwdown, of course.
Please,
man. I'm telling you, like Mount Pleasant, or there's a couple other big shows we do. I know we don't go to the Northeast a whole lot anymore, but man, it's a good time. We'll make it happen. We'll get you some bookings around here or something. Also, nice. Phil Vinchinanza in the comments says Shorts can drive at your next. Oh, I'm not gonna have a next wedding, you prick. Anyways, okay, so so we've talked wrestling, we've talked a little bit of monster trucks. Let's talk about how you combine the two. How did you come up with the human monster truck, and how did you introduce it to the wrestling world?
So my persona had started to evolve as more or less as my body had started to evolve. I started off sort of pear-shaped. I had sort of a King Kong Bundy kind of build early on. And then in 2010, I lost 110 pounds in 10 months. And I dropped down to 190, which made me look a little sickly. Started working hard, putting some muscle back on, got up to about 200. And at the time, I was a full-time elementary school teacher. And my kids were so polite as to give me the worst stomach flu I've ever had in my life. And I lost 15 pounds in 72 hours.
Ooh.
Put me at 185, the lightest I've been as an adult. It's an effective weight loss strategy, but not one I recommend. And then over the ensuing 10 years after that, building muscle is a slow process. And I went from very fat to incredibly skinny to now where I borderline look like an athlete, depending on your opinion of how an athlete should look. And it was somewhere right around 2018. I'd been back on this coast for about a year and a half and had put on some good size, and I had been wrestling constantly against a guy at the time known as Tomahawk. We had one match against each other that people went nuts for. And after that, every place wanted to book us against each other. We wrestled each other in 2 different time zones in Canada. We wrestled each other in 3 different time zones in the US, something like 9 different states, just constantly. And we were frankly kind of sick of it. Like we'd done 8-minute barn burners where we just went nuts for 8 minutes. And then we had one match that went almost a full hour. Like we did everything under the sun. We did regular just bell to bell in the ring, hitting the ropes, running spots. We did fighting all over a giant carnival where we wound up fighting on top of the ring truck. You can see the Ferris wheel behind us. Really great imagery. He now, of course, is known as Iron Rip Bison, who was a former Limitless Wrestling champion. And he and I got so sick of wrestling each other, we decided the only way to make sure that we didn't have to wrestle each other anymore was to start being a tag team.
Mad.
So, yeah, we became Mutually Assured Destruction, or MAD, which felt fitting since we were essentially calling a ceasefire in our own best interest. So, Mutually Assured Destruction. And at that point, the rich snob Perry didn't fit anymore. We wanted to present ourselves as heels. The audience never bought that for a second because we were 2 huge guys that chucked everyone around like maniacs, and they loved it. Rip is a few inches shorter than me, but legitimately will put 700 pounds on his yoke bar and walk it around his house for cardio. So he's a nut. He's insanely strong. He's a power lifter and a nutcase. So essentially I had to find a new persona. I didn't want to change the name. I knew I wanted to keep Perry Von Vicious. I'd had it at that point for 13 years, so kind of hard to get rid of it. So instead, I started thinking about, for a long time, I joked that because I was Von Vicious, that Sid Vicious was my uncle. So I joked for a long time that Psycho Sid was my uncle, and started being billed as Uncle Sid's favorite nephew, Perry Von Vicious. And I was sort of I had short hair at the time, and I would spike it, and I came out with the vest like Sid. And that was okay, but it wasn't natural. And we'd been teaming a lot, so it was fine that it wasn't a great character because the team was kind of the character. And then COVID hit and the world shut down. There were no bookings to be had, nothing to do. I did one closed studio taping while the world was shut down. It was September of 2020 for Limitless Wrestling, where they would have a bunch of wrestlers come up, and you would only wrestle the people that rode in your car. So you had sort of a bubble. You had to keep a mask on unless you were in the ring and the cameras were rolling. And they had a maximum number of wrestlers who could sit around ringside in seats that you were not allowed to move. It was very, very regimented, very responsible considering. So I went and wrestled there, and that was the last appearance of Uncle Sid's favorite nephew. Because when I came home and those matches started to air was the first time I realized COVID being shut down did wonders for my body. I looked incredible. I put on some real muscle lifting in my basement at home with nowhere else to go, and I could plan all my meals and cook my meals as my day went because I didn't have to drive to work anymore. I had my oven right there. And so I was looking at it, I was going, wow, I look huge. I might need to come up with something better than this not working Sid's nephew thing. And someone shared a GIF from one of the matches as it aired on IWTV, where I just obliterated the guy. The guy I was in the ring with at the time was Kaiju Big Battle's American Beetle, who was also the same guy who was Kaiju Big Battle's Dr. Cube. Now he's better known to the wrestling world as Dr. Redacted, who is a insane deathmatch wrestler who's been all over the world and one of my dearest friends. He's actually going to be on the GCW podcast tonight at 11 p.m. or something like that. People should check that out.
Oh, we'll have to do that.
Because this will be done by then and my stream will be done by then. So everyone can tune into that if they want.
Excellent.
But I just demolished him with one move. And someone had retweeted it and said something like, wow, it just crushed him. And so I took a screen grab of that whole thing so it would all be captured at once. And just thinking like those dumb old Ultimate Warrior promos where he just said inane nonsense, I just retweeted it in all capitals with no punctuation of any type. I wrote, I am Perry Von Vicious and I am a human monster truck. And thought nothing of it. No, I wasn't going to change gimmicks. I wasn't going to change characters. It was just a dumb tweet because we were all stuck at home. And that's all we could do. And I woke up the next morning and I had north of 15 DMs from people I know in wrestling with that tweet attached saying, you need to keep that. That's really good. Wow. And so I thought, like, I'll do something with that. And I was kind of thinking about it. And right around the time the world started to open back up, I rode up to Limitless, and Danhausen was there. He was doing a seminar for the Limitless kids on developing characters and marketability, those kinds of things. And like he and I knew each other a little bit. We'd been in some matches together, in the years leading up to that. And I asked him, like, hey, I'm kind of thinking of doing this like monster truck gimmick, but I have no idea what it even like looks like. Like if I need to change my look or my outfit or anything. And his eyes lit up and he just said,
hi, Cheeto.
You could make a lot of merch money with monster trucks.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the only thing he said to me about it. And he's 1,000% right, because I also during COVID took up 3D designing and 3D printing. So I do have a series of Perry Von Vicious Hot Wheels scale monster trucks that I've sold at shows. The T-shirts, because they have monster trucks and stuff on them, sell like crazy.
Kids love monster truck shirts.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, even my 8x10. You go down a merch table at a wrestling show and it's guy flexing, guy snarling, guy looking angry, guy doing this thing, guy doing this thing. Mm-hmm. It's all those over and over. It's just some dude's face. You get to mine and there's a giant monster truck with me next to it. And that's the one the kids want.
Absolutely. And
I mean, even the grown-ups.
Yeah. And that's such a good point too. And I think a lot of people, the way that I view monster trucks, and I've been doing it for over 10 years now, and you really realize like in a lot of ways, a lot of promotions are just marketing companies to get people in to sell them merch. It's the business side isn't about the show. It's about getting people in to buy merchandise. And that's a big piece of the business. And there's a lot of teams that rely on those merch sales and a lot of promotions that rely on those merch sales. So I think that's a really great point, because that's a great parallel between the two different types of entertainment businesses that we're dealing with here.
And they're definitely similar worlds,
Very.
The teams, the individuals who market themselves the best, often it's because they're connecting the best with their audience, and that's who's going to end up making the most money.
And that's why there's so many trucks like El Toro Loco or Monster Mutt or on the independent side, even you got a lot of those. Like you got Frostbite now. You got Kylie Kent and
first one that came to mind.
Yep. Kylie Kent.
Yep, that was the first one I thought of.
Who is awesome. Shout out Send It Motorsports. Crazy Train is now on the Monster Jam first quarter circuit. So I mean, it's the two are so similar in so many ways. One being that they are somewhat marketed as competitions, even though they're not. But merch sales are huge for both of them, and it's crazy how similar they are. And a lot of people that like monster trucks also like wrestling, and that's kind of hard to explain, but the two are just so similar to each other.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think the umbrella term that WWE has clung to so much, sports entertainment. Monster trucks are kind of just motorsports entertainment.
Absolutely.
It's the same idea, just instead of combat, it's in the world of racing.
Correct. And there's definitely competition that, between the people in the back, probably similarly, maybe there is in a sense between the boys in the back and, at any show that you might go to. But all in all, I mean, everybody's getting paid, some a little bit more than others, depending on how well they perform and how much merch they sell. And so, I mean, it's very similar that way too, probably.
Absolutely.
Yeah, very fascinating stuff. So obviously, I've seen a lot of clips of your promos. You play an old school monster truck clip from the 80s or 90s and whatever it may be. You kind of go into your promo in front of the green screen there. So obviously you are leaning a lot on old school monster trucks to make Perry Von Vicious tick, the human monster truck. What inspirations do you pull from wrestling to make the human monster truck go?
There's a huge influence from the Road Warriors. That's sort of like, they just feel so much larger than life to me. Like, what everyone in wrestling, they talk about the Road Warrior pop, because it didn't really matter where they showed up, how much fanfare they were given ahead of time. If their music hit, any version of their music hit in any country in front of any audience, the roof came off. And there's something to be said for presenting yourself huge that way. And you can see it in their promos, where they just, the second the mic goes in front of them, they spring to life. I try to get a little of that going on my promos in front of the green screen. And even in like a presentation in front of an audience, I try to have some of that. Like I want to seem bigger. Like I'm a big guy, but I want to seem bigger. So it's the reason that when I come through the curtain, if you ever see a clip of me wrestling, it's both arms in the air, hands open wide, just huge. Because anything I can do to seem bigger than what they expect, I think really leaves an impression. And I mean, even for quite some time, I don't really wear it as much now, but like I would have a vest, or a vest with a leather jacket under it, and the vest is covered with spikes, and on the back has a huge monster truck, and like just it's covered with huge things to make me look crazy. And it's not just the little metal spikes like the biker spikes like you think of; those are on there. But I also like 3D printed my own sort of like kaiju Godzilla spikes that are all on it, and I just and you see that with the Road Warriors. That's the shoulder pads they wore out to the ring and everything. You wanna stand out. For a long time, when I would, because I was asked to run seminars and I still do sometimes, because different characters I had always did well. And that was the thing that schools would have me teach their students, was like, teach them a little bit about how to find a character. Like they all think they have a character, but none of them do. And they were right. And I would tell them, like, little kid comes to a local indie wrestling show on a Friday. He's going to see 7 to 10 matches, because that's how indie shows go. No one knows when to say no. So there's 10 matches sometimes. And in those matches, some of them are going to be scrambles. There's going to be rumbles. There's going to be 6-man tags, 8-man tags, tag matches, singles. They could see north of 40 wrestlers that night. I mean, 20 minimum. I think the smallest show I've been on in the States in the last decade probably had 12 people. And it was a pro wrestling grind show where they explicitly said, we're doing 4 matches and that's it. It's a lot of characters. So there's so many that come through. 10-year-old kid comes to that show on a Friday night, spends 2 hours seeing 20 to 40 people. When they go to school Monday, are they going to tell their friends about the guy that just looked like a wrestler, might have had a catchy name, but just looked like a wrestler and did wrestling things, which is most wrestlers? Or is he going to say, oh, there was this rich dickhead with a monocle and an ascot and tearaway pants, and when he tore him off, he was pale as a sheet of printer paper, and man, did he get his butt kicked. That's what they're going to remember. The human monster truck comes out with a monster truck on the back of his vest covered in spikes, throwing people around, and then when you went to the merch table, he had monster truck toys everywhere. They're going to remember that. And I would try to impress that upon people. Like, yeah, get good at what you're doing, be yourself, but not if yourself is boring.
Sure. I'm boring, so
I think I got you beat.
Yeah, Shorts, you're pretty boring, right?
No, I'm not like you guys.
Oh, okay, fair enough.
A very busy man.
I mean, truth be told, outside of my public persona, I am fairly boring as well.
So I guess to that point, so that's kind of what you pull on from the wrestling world to make Perry Von Vicious work. What are some things you do in ring, or what's a good way to ask this? Because it's weird. It's a weird question that will probably never be said in a sentence ever again. What do you use as inspiration from the monster truck world as you're wrestling? It's like in-ring movements. What are you pulling from the monster truck side of things? Because when you're the human monster truck, I can only assume you probably had to make some changes to kind of help facilitate this new thing you're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. Honestly, it's not for individual moves. The moves I do are not selected to necessarily reflect monster trucks, but the types of moves or the way that I portray my physicality in the ring is directly from monster trucks, because I try to keep one thought in mind when I'm thinking about how I'm going to wrestle. Because I could go out and I could do a bunch of technical wrestling. I was trained to do all of it. I just spent last year, I spent 3 months in Japan training with Tajiri. I learned all kinds of crazy, great technical stuff. And I can do complicated pins. I can do complicated submissions. I can run, lucha spots. I trained lucha for years in California. I can do springboards and all these things. But at the end of the day, is anyone going to the monster truck show? Is anyone buying a ticket to Monster Jam to see someone parallel park?
I mean,
you're not watching a monster truck for skills. There is the skills competition, but really, you're kind of just hoping they crash.
Don't get me started, man. That's
really,
a whole nother podcast.
This is the philosophy: is you're there to see them wreck something. You're there to see them go fast. You're there to see them just push the machine to its limits and cause some destruction. So that's what I do in the ring. I charge at people and squash them in the corner. I pick them up and chuck them recklessly. I'll run and dive over the top rope at somebody. I mean, I've had a list for a while, and when the time comes where I have a little more time to mess around making a highlight reel, I do have a list of what things you see monster trucks do that could easily be reflected in a move that I do. I've done moonsaults. There's the backflip. When I do the merry-go-round, I'm spinning a circle. That's donuts.
Sure.
There's all kinds of moves that I've done that feel like something you see a monster truck do. And it's entirely because my feeling was I'm 6'3", 240 pounds of being built arguably like an athlete. They're probably not all that interested in seeing an arm wringer. They want to see a power bomb. They want to see a choke slam. They want to see a gorilla press. They want to see me shoulder block someone so hard that they go flying out of the ropes onto the floor. So yeah, I try to keep that monster truck philosophy in my head when I'm putting together matches.
Absolutely. Man, I love it. I love all of this. Boys, I obviously want to be respectful of Perry's time here. Any other, I guess, quick questions you guys want to throw in there? I know we have just a few jotted down.
Short, you got anything right now? I had something earlier, but I forgot.
Oh, I do. Do you think you wrestle? I guess there's two parts. Do you think you wrestle better as a heel or face? And which one do you like? Wrestling.
I can only answer for 2025, Perry, because it's where I am now. I really like wrestling as a babyface. I like being able to. I feel like I command the audience in a very different way as a babyface. Where if I hook for a move that they know that I do, I can stop and kind of look out and hear the people come up for it. That's really cool. Being able to come through the curtain and hear a roar as soon as I'm seen. And then once I've made my way closer to the crowd, I'll always look for an empty chair. Like if someone's got up to go get a soda or something, I'll grab the chair and stand on it in the middle of a group of people and throw my arms in the air, and hearing them come back up again. Really cool. It's such a hard thing to replicate in another situation. I've done theater, I've toured in punk bands. I did stand-up comedy, but being able to just throw your arms in the air and the people just cheer because it's you, pretty unreal, pretty cool. I enjoyed wrestling as a heel. I felt like I had a lot of control in the matches in that role, but I don't miss it.
So who's your favorite opponent? Obviously, it's not going to be the guy that you tagged with after how many matches. Oh wait. Oh, who won those pinfalls? By the way, who had the most wins?
So in over 30 singles matches with each other, not even counting times we were in tag matches or triple threats and those things. In like 30 something matches, I won twice.
What?
Yeah.
Crazy.
One time I took a company's main belt off of him. I became a heavyweight champion, beat him for that. And the only other time that it was a singles was just some random match in a state where they didn't know us well, and they needed the heel to go up in that match. So I got lucky one time. But other than that, yeah, Rip Bison holds a great streak over me. Although I will say, we were only on opposite sides of the ring one time while we were touring Japan, and I won that match.
See, in Japan, I feel like it has to be a little extra special.
And I mean, I was teaming with Tajiri in that match, so like, yeah, that's pretty good.
It's wild.
Did you ever do the green mist?
So in that match, in that tag match, Rip got the green mist from Tajiri, and then a week later, me and Rip teamed with Tajiri against 3 good guys. It was our going away match, our last match in Japan before the end of the tour. And at the end, there was a miscommunication where Rip got the red mist from Tajiri. Tajiri got bumped out of the ring, and then Rip got pinned by the good guys. And I got in at the end mad at Tajiri and goozled him. And when I picked him up for a choke slam and had him in the air, he hit me with the green mist from up in the choke slam.
Oh man, Christmas mist in this match, red and green. Goodness.
Yeah. We couldn't get in front of a camera backstage fast enough to get the picture of both of us covered with the mist together. That was pretty great.
It's special.
Yeah, and he owed us because I mean I don't know how much kayfabe I'm supposed to break, but when Americans go over to wrestle for Kyushu Pro, Tajiri reaches out to you ahead of time and tells you the brand of food coloring he uses for his mists, and it's not available over there.
Oh.
So he asks you to please pick up a few boxes of it for him to bring over. So technically, we brought him the mist he hit us with.
I kind of wish we lived in a country where we didn't have food coloring available, but here we are.
I mean, they have it available. Just theirs stains worse, I think, is what he was telling us. He was saying it's just the McCormick, the kind that we all picture.
Of course.
Oh, yeah.
Yep,
like the only food coloring anyone
the little
can picture.
gnome hats as lids.
Gnome hats.
Yeah, and that stuff apparently doesn't stain, and I can attest it didn't stain too bad.
Nice.
None of my gear got messed up, but even after a lot of careful face washing, there was definitely still some green on me for the drive back to the company house after the show.
Excellent.
Where was your favorite promotion to wrestle at? If you want to do that, you don't have to.
I mean, I have a lot of favorites. The experience of wrestling for Kyushu Pro in Japan was really wild and just a great experience in every way. Like, so professional. Like, I mean, it looked like wrestling you see on TV. It didn't look like an indie. So that was really cool. And the crowds, I mean, I think the smallest crowd we wrestled for them was like 800 people. And they were like apologizing to us. Like, we're so sorry. It's such a small house. And we're like, it was in a mall. We're like looking up 3 stories of people staring down at the ring. We're going, you're sorry? That was our first match. And we're going, you're sorry about this? But yeah, the next day we had the next show that we did for them was the next day. And it was 1,700. And they were like, this is more normal. Okay, cool, man. So that was pretty cool, but really, like, if I'm to promote any places, it's what I consider sort of my 3 home promotions. There's Pro Wrestling Grind, that's out of East Hampton, Massachusetts, that is owned and operated by 2 of my closest friends in pro wrestling, Iron Rip Bison and his fiance Delmi Exo, who is the MLW Women's Champion. The two of them own and operate Pro Wrestling Grind. Then just a little bit south of here in Enfield, Connecticut, is Blitzkrieg Pro, which is run by Jeremy Leary, who is another wrestler out here who graduated wrestling school with me. We had our first match the same night. It was the same match back in 2008. And then just a bit north of here up in Maine is Limitless Wrestling. And those are sort of my three home bases. I go all over. I go to all kinds of other places, but those are the three that I clear my calendar. I don't miss those shows. Those places really matter to me.
Kind of like someone I know with monster trucks.
What's that supposed to mean?
You're gone every week.
That happens. Yes, I know. Trust me, I know. My wife loves it too. Well, she likes getting to go with me sometimes, but she thinks monster trucks are stupid. But I get that because they are.
Until she gets to drive one.
She has.
I know.
Yeah. She still thought it was stupid, and I still don't blame her. Yeah, anyways. Sorry, Shorts, did you have anything else outside of that?
Mm-mm.
Oh, man. Well, so I guess last question. I know I asked you in one of your streams, and it doesn't sound like you follow modern wrestling too religiously, but of what you know is out there right now, if anything, what are you enjoying, and what do you kind of think about the current landscape of mainstream wrestling in 2025? Because there's been a lot that's changed even just very recently.
Yeah, and not following it closely, there's so little of it that I know. Someone in my Twitch chat just yesterday was telling me that Cody Rhodes and The Rock had something going on this weekend, and I was like, "Wow, The Rock's back on TV!" And I had to be told that. So yeah, I in fact the night this is gonna sound like so anti-wrestling. The night that Raw debuted on Netflix, I was like, yeah, I'm gonna check it out. Cool. It'll be the first time. I was an early era cable cutter. I haven't had a television service in 15 years.
Same.
And I was like, oh, I'm gonna turn it on and see. It'll be my first chance to watch WWE television live in over a decade and a half. Cool. Mm-hmm. I turned it on, and because I wasn't subscribed to that insane HD tier for Netflix, I was on the regular tier. It was unwatchable. It looked like it was like a Nintendo game. It was so pixelated. Wow. It kept freezing and the sound was bad. I'd had Netflix for 15 years at that point. I canceled my Netflix subscription 10 minutes into the debut of Raw. I was like, nope, I'm done with you guys. There's 3 shows on here I care to watch, and most of them I can get totally legally somewhere else.
That's how Schwartz consumes his wrestling as well.
Yeah, I was like, I'm just done with this. As far as the stuff I'm actually enjoying, because again, I think almost everything televised in the States, I don't keep up enough to know what's going on. I do enjoy what I see from AEW. The drips and drabs I see online. The stuff I see from WWE seems like they're headed in pretty cool directions. A lot of new young talent who are really good, and creative and doing cool stuff. I like that a lot. I love the fact that some of these companies are starting to work together that otherwise in previous generations never would have. Mm-hmm. The TNA WWE partnership is exciting. Yep. AEW New Japan is really exciting. All that stuff is cool. Japan sort of has their own version of it now, where all the companies have decided, screw it, we're all going to work together. So Noah guys show up over in New Japan, and New Japan guys show up on All Japan, and Kyushu Pro guys show up in New Japan. Everyone's bouncing place to place. DDT shows up different places. There's girls from Stardom that are showing up for Tokyo Joshi Pro. All kinds of crossover, and that's to me the most exciting thing that's happening, because it was always so segmented before, and the idea that you work there, you're not here, mm-hmm. or you're over there, so these fans don't like you purely because you work over there. Pretty soon you're not going to be able to have that tribalism because everybody's going to be everywhere,
right?
And that's pretty cool. At that point, it's no longer you know, you're no longer having these weird like allegiances to companies. It now becomes an art form, where now it's maybe you like a certain style instead of just, oh, this guy has these three letters attached to him. I think that's really exciting.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, that's super rad. So outside of that, I know we mentioned before, Perry does some streams on his own on Twitch. So Perry, let them know all the socials, everywhere they can find you, any upcoming shows you got going on, the whole nine, the whole Perry Von Vicious gamut.
Sure. I am on all social medias, with a few terrible exceptions that no one's on. But I'm on all the social medias that a normal sane person would be on. At Perry Von Vicious on all of them. You can get me Mondays and Tuesdays, 9 p.m. Eastern. I stream on twitch.tv/Perry Von Vicious. And I'm pulling up my upcoming shows now. Let's see. We're heading into March now. Yeah, coming up in March. I won't be at or on the show, but March 15th, Pro Wrestling Grind makes its return for the year following the winter hiatus in East Hampton. March 21st, I will be on Limitless Wrestling in Portland, Maine. Their biggest show of the year, the Bissell Brothers Bash, at a huge arena, probably over 1,000 people at that. That'll be really great. March 29th, I will be on Blitzkrieg Pro in Enfield, Connecticut. And after that, there's just all kinds of dates. It kind of gets a little muddy, but Blitzkrieg Pro, Pro Wrestling Grind, and Limitless Wrestling, all of those should be checked out to find me. Also, youtube.com/Perry Von Vicious. I have vlogs that go up pretty regularly showing my travels to monster truck shows, to wrestling shows, to Disney parks, to different concerts, checking out all my favorite punk and ska bands and comedy and novelty artists when they come around, as well as maker videos. I do 3D printing and toy making, and I love to share that process online. You guys will enjoy, we've been talking some monster trucks. I took a body off of a modern Hot Wheels Bigfoot and 3D printed my own Matchbox Supercharger chassis for it.
Oh, that's so rad.
Complete with a little engine and a little driver in there. That's something I'm really proud of, doing customs like that. And yeah, that's actually what I'm going to be doing on stream later tonight at 9 p.m. on Twitch. I'm going to be on Tinkercad modeling up a Matchbox Supercharger style tractor puller.
Good chance I might pop in and check that out once I get finished up with all this. So everybody, make sure you check out Perry Von Vicious on all the socials. Check his Twitch stream tonight. He'll be making some monster truck toys. That's good stuff. Perry, we really, really appreciate your time. I'm sure I'll stay in touch with you one way or another. I think it'd be awesome to have you on the All Monster podcast once we get that relaunched here. And then hopefully at a Throwdown show especially. Maybe we could do an in-person retake of this. So really appreciate it, man.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you so much for having me.